Before this video begins, I just want to let you know that my opinion on this game has kind of changed after I watched the full developer commentary series on YouTube. I'll link to that in the description if you're interested in watching it. The video hasn't changed at all though, because I wanted to document my original feelings on the game, you know, as someone who doesn't know all the references and all that. I'll also give a bit of an afterword at the end of the video to kind of explain how my opinion changed and so on. Yeah, take it away past me. Lumo. Oh, let me tell you about Lumo. I saw this game at my local GameStop and thought the cover looked inviting. The character looked cute and the world seemed imaginative. And on its Steam page it says it's reviving an old genre. Hey, sounds awesome, right? So I picked it up. And it sat on my shelf for months. I don't know why, I just didn't feel like playing it. Thinking back on it, that was probably the gods doing their best to make me avoid it, because holy shit, I was in for a grand old time when I finally decided to play it. First of all, see this cute character on the cover? That's not what you look like. This is you. For about a minute before you're transported into the game all Tron style, and now you look like this. Tiny, chubby, baby looking thing that sounds like this when you die. Yep, it gets really annoying. Anyway, Lumo is an isometric adventure platformer game. Not a genre I'm very familiar with, and if this game is anything to go by, I'm not sure I want to be either. I just can't like this game. Let me explain why. For starters, the pacing is awful. You move painfully slow and there's a loading screen between each room that can take up to several seconds to complete. Sure, it may not sound like much, but it completely breaks the pace of the game. And it's not just for walking through rooms either, it's on cutscenes too. Just watch this. See what I mean? Here's another. I waited that long just to have a static screen go bzzzt at me. Oh my god. I'm sorry, I'm already getting ahead of myself here. You're probably wondering what you do in this game. Well, I'll tell you what you do. You walk. You walk through rooms and corridors. You go to one room to get a thing for another room so you can access another corridor. That's pretty much it. Or how it felt for me anyway. Sure, there are a few puzzles here and there, but all they do is unlock another fucking corridor. And look, I get that's what most puzzles in games are for, but it never feels like a rewarding experience in Lumo. Push a box, turn a valve, find a key, just so that you get to do the same thing a few minutes later. It just doesn't feel rewarding. There's nothing driving the adventure, not even the exploration because of the bad pacing and because of how samey everything looks. And when something finally happens, it doesn't feel rewarding enough to keep me going. Like here, around an hour into the game, I finally get a wand. But guess what? It's completely useless. You have to go through another series of rooms to get this lantern before you can even use it. So why even have all this? It's completely unnecessary. But that's not all. Now that I can light up my staff, I can finally use it against these spiders I faced a few rooms earlier. But not even that is a rewarding experience. All you do is scare them away. Why? They've murdered me countless times before, so why can't I just squish them now that I finally get a power-up? Well, basically all this power-up is useful for is to uncover these invisible blocks that you can only stand on while the light is active. Fair enough, I guess. It's good enough to pass as an interesting game mechanic. But why not make the adventure a little more exciting? Give me an actual power-up or some cool abilities. Give me treasure to find and collect. Well, not that there isn't any collectibles in the game, it's just that they're almost completely meaningless. You have the main 4 collectibles, one for each area. Then aside from those you can collect coins, rubber ducks, cassette tapes and maps. The ducks are only found in the first area of the game. The cassette tapes are almost always found in these out-of-bounds hidden rooms, and while I love the idea, it gets old quick. Once you know how to find one, you know how to find them all, basically. The coins are mostly collected in these minigames, which I'll get to in a moment. And the maps are almost entirely useless. They don't show your position or anything worth noting, apart from a few symbols like where you found the map. Thanks, super useful. Now let's talk about the minigames. Every now and then the game will change up the gameplay a little by throwing these minigames at you, and well, some of them I found a fun distraction, but the rest were pretty forgettable. Now I really like this idea though, having these sort of classic minigames scattered around, but I can't help but to feel like it's poorly done here. Most of them will just have you control your guy like normal, which is fine, but a few of them will have you do something different, or even completely new stuff, like this one with the boulder thing. I feel like it controls too poorly to work well in this kind of minigame. Like, once you get rolling, you get some real heavy momentum, and it's pretty hard to slow yourself down. Besides, did I mention your controls are flipped when you're on one of these? Now, to be fair, you do get a little bit of practice with this thing early in the game, and I made it harder than it needed to be because I used the modern controlling option instead of the classic, so that one is all on me, but how about this shoot 'em up thing? I mean, the perspective is all weird, making it hard to see incoming enemies and what I'm aiming for, and it doesn't even let me shoot on my own. It just starts shooting when you reach a certain point, and it doesn't stop until you're done. Like, it's not any fun. At least with the other one I can put the blame on myself on the controls. Speaking of controls, the modern option cost me a lot of trouble, so I don't recommend you use it. That much should have been obvious to me, but oh well, at least you can change it whenever you want from the pause menu. What bothers me more is this turning camera thing you can do. It barely turns at all, making it almost completely useless. Not to mention the fact that it doesn't always work either. For some reason, it's completely disabled in some rooms, and usually in the rooms where I found myself needing it the most, so I don't really see the point of it. I ended up using it very rarely because it basically just caused more deaths. But yeah, you die a lot in this game. By falling in water, touching spikes, touching lasers, being incinerated, getting squished, touching toasters? Holy shit, it's like the whole game wants you dead. Well, I can't really complain too much about it because I get that the game is supposed to be tough, and well, a lot of it is mostly my fault, and the game is nice enough to give me infinite lives in this game mode, so that's all good. The problem, however, is the respawning. Never mind that annoying sound. The respawn animation, if you can call it that, completely freezes you in place until all the particles are gone. Sure, it doesn't take too long, but it's another pace breaker that can completely throw you off, especially if whatever you're trying to do requires timing. Which brings me to the level and room design. Most of them are pretty alright, you know, straightforward and with some good challenges, but there are a few in here that are just absolutely awful. This room in particular was an absolute pain in the ass. The first chain here is way too close to the wall, making it very hard to get enough momentum in the right direction because I keep fucking bumping into the wall. And the third chain seems just a little bit too far away, so I can't make that jump consistently either. But that's okay, because after dying enough times here, this goddamn floating platform appears to help you across. Now, I don't know if that's done on purpose as some kind of a dick move, but nevertheless it feels like an afterthought. As does this platform right here, because when you finally reach it, there's a fucking checkpoint here. I mean, thanks for putting it here, because I would have been pretty mad if I had to do this stuff over and over, but like, why not just fix the chains instead? Oh, and the ice physics, the fucking ice physics. There's a part in the castle where all the grounds are ice, and oh, I wanted to pull my hair out when I got to this part. Trying to move around here is a nightmare. You slide around like crazy, and you lose control of yourself fast. And on top of it all, you're expected to do quite a bit of tricky platforming here. Like, what is this level design? One block slippery platforms? That's not fair, nor is it any fun. And this room has you navigating this mess of a floor while an aggressive spiky block follows you around. Oh, and it's faster than you, so of course you'll want to move at top speed all the time, but oh my god, just look at this! But that doesn't even come close to this room. This goddamn place took me nearly half an hour to get through. And you know why? Because of the fucking ice physics. The puzzle isn't hard. All I have to do is line up these blocks to reach the exit, but the physics makes this one of the most insufferable rooms in the game in my opinion. Let me explain why. First of all, these ice blocks need barely any force at all to be pushed. So if you as much as touch it with just a little bit of extra momentum, the block goes flying in that direction. This makes it way too easy to mess this up since the floors are slippery, obviously, and also you have to be incredibly specific when you try to jump on top of these because if you jump a bit too early or too late and so much as touches the side of the block, it goes flying. And when you've finally got on top one of these, your character just cannot stand still. It's like the top is bowl-shaped, making you slide around constantly, making it frustratingly easy to fall off. And finally, if you hit the corners of the blocks while trying to jump on top of them, it'll send you flying in the opposite direction, often with a lot of extra momentum, so you could hit another block while sliding backwards and it'll still send the fucker flying across the room. And look, I realize I'm not doing the puzzle as intended here, but come on. I could definitely have made some of these jumps, but because of how the physics work, I keep failing it over and over and over. It's hard to explain just how bad all this is, on top of the already terrible ice physics. You can kinda get an idea from this footage, I hope, but I think you'd really have to play it for yourself to feel it. And I have to ask, what the hell is up with the performance here? The game doesn't seem graphically intensive at all. I mean, the textures are low res and the background is just a static image, but the game seems to stutter and slow down all the time. You can especially see it when you hit one of these ice blocks with another ice block. Like, I don't understand why that, of all things, would cause stuttering. Not to mention the load times I briefly talked about in the beginning of the video. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to them. Some rooms take way longer to load than other much bigger rooms. Like, the whole thing just seems random, and it probably has to do with optimization. In fact, all this seems to be the Switch version's fault, as I tried it out on my PC and it looks and plays a lot better. The textures are high res, and the load times are much faster, so if you're gonna play this, I'd recommend you getting the PC version, as the pacing is way better in my opinion. Anyway, back to your regular scheduled complaining. This game also suffers from a lot of inconsistent rules. These buttons don't always spawn an ice block, even when the ice block is clearly destroyed from before. Touching some fire particles kills you instantly, but others you can stand in all you want. Your light will always chase away the spiders, except for this one, and only this one because he's wearing fucking sunglasses. But the most annoying one is the rubber ducks. They're basically just a collectible, like I mentioned earlier. Touch it and get to an exit without dying to keep it. But the problem is that you don't always bounce off of them. Sometimes you just fall straight through, and I know this just sounds like nitpicking, but for fuck's sake, there's an achievement in which you have to collect all 32 rubber ducks without dying while holding one. You can't have that if your ducks don't work properly, dude. And then there's the water. You can't touch this water, but you can swim here. Oh, by the way, you wanna know how you swim in this game? You jump in and press B to submerge yourself, and then, haha, I'm just kidding, you need to wait until your character sinks down by himself, and then you can move around underwater. Much slower than moving around on land, naturally. Man, there are so many buttons on modern controllers, why couldn't you have just made another action button for this? Or just used B? Oh, and speaking of which, why is the button for jump also the same button for activate teleporter, huh? Like, you use one of these, wait through another loading screen, and then you naturally want to jump off, right? At least I do, but that just makes you teleport back again. Ugh, this game is such a drag, man. I can't for the life of me understand how so many people looked at this and decided it was a 9 out of 10. I see a lot of people saying this game is a lot like Solstice for the NES. Now, I never played that, so I looked up some gameplay of it, and yeah, sure, I see where Lumo got its ideas from, but do you know what I also see? Power-ups and abilities, good pacing, snappy load times, and a functional map system. But hey, maybe I just don't understand it. Maybe it's just not for me. I mean, there are a lot of good and interesting ideas in this game, and I can tell that it's a love letter to this era of gaming with all the nods and references to other games from that time, but I just can't like it because of all the problems I have with it. And because of that, I can't recommend you play this game. I mean, it would sound pretty stupid after all this I said, hey, yeah, this game is great, go buy it. Unless, of course, what you've seen looks fun to you, in which case, I'm sorry, but that's none of my business. By all means, go have fun. Don't let my negativity stop you. Hey, future me here again. Now, like I mentioned earlier, my opinion has kinda changed after I watched the developer commentary on the game. I now understand far more of what the game set out to do, and I also understand why it's so highly rated. Basically, this game is not meant for me. It's meant for the people who grew up with these kinds of games. There are so many nods and references to games and other stuff from that time that I personally would have never known about if I hadn't seen the commentary. However, if I was one of those people, I would also have loved this game and given it a high rating. But as a person who isn't familiar with this type of stuff, I still don't like it very much. However, I do respect it, and the developer. From what I understand, this was made entirely by one person, and that in itself is pretty awesome. But also the fact that he made an entire series explaining all of the stuff that I personally missed, so... Sorry dude, I still don't like your game, but I absolutely respect you and what the game set out to do.